There's a particular kind of silence that hums inside a ballroom where the carpet is too thick, the lighting too gold, and every glass of champagne is a quiet declaration of someone's success. I sat in the back row, my thrifted black dress, wrinkling at the knees, a run in my tights like a fault line beneath the surface. No one noticed me, which was almost comforting. I didn't want to be noticed. I only wanted to see her. Sophia. She took the stage like she was born on it, draped in ivory silk, every spotlight flattering her as if it were a lover. Her hair was longer now, curled and swept to the side, the way I used to style it before her screenings. But this time, there was no searching glance into the crowd, no nervous smile aimed toward me. Only applause. And her name, alone spoken in reverence by the host, a visionary filmmaker who gives a voice to the voiceless. My stomach curled in on itself. When we were still together, this gala had been a shared dream. We used to lie on the living room rug, scripts fanned between us like tarot cards, imagining what it would feel like to be seen. Back then, our victories felt mutual. Back then, I believed that credit was love language. Now I watched her stride to the podium, all grace and polish and perfectly poised smiles. She spoke of stories rooted in truth, of giving shape to silence, and I felt the old ache start to burn at the base of my spine, the kind that warns you just before. The ground splits, then the reel began, a short film, the centerpiece of her new documentary series. The lights dimmed, the screen flickered to life. The first lines of narration floated through the speakers, soft and aching, and I froze. They were my words, not just similar, not borrowed. Mine. Lines I had written in the dark with shaking hands. Scenes born from nights I couldn't sleep, from a version of myself too fragile to exist in the daylight. Sophia had held my head in her lap as I read those passages aloud, pages I never intended to share. She had said they were beautiful, raw, too good not to be seen. She hadn't just seen them. She had taken them, the montage on the screen showed. An actress walking through fog. A scene I wrote about grief and coffee and motherhood, lifted almost word for word. My metaphors, my rhythm, my story now dressed in someone else's performance. And beneath it, in bold serif credits, written and directed by Sophia. Blaked out my lungs forgot how to work. The ballroom clapped around me like an ocean of applause I couldn't swim through. I stared at the screen, waiting, hoping for something. A footnote, a nod, a thank you, but my name never came. I sat there, numb, surrounded by faces I didn't know, as Sophia stood on stage beaming. Every smile she gave felt like another theft. I'd given her everything, my voice, my trust, and she'd wrapped them in ribbon and called them hers. I don't remember clapping. I don't remember leaving, but I remember the feeling, like the floor had collapsed in quiet, invisible increments, and I finally noticed I was standing on nothing. I stumbled outside before the gala ended. The Portland night was cold and damp, the streetlights flickering, like they too were pretending to glow. I leaned against a lamppost, my breath catching in sobs I couldn't make sound. I wanted to scream, but there was no one to scream to. She wasn't just my girlfriend, she had been my first audience, my collaborator, my mirror. And now she'd become the stage. I wiped my cheeks with the sleeve of my coat. The cold air bit at my skin. I reached for my phone, instinct, maybe, or masochism, and opened her social feed. There she was, framed in light. A caption below it candid. Shot of her on stage. Some stories aren't ours to tell, but some of us tell them anyway. I read it 3 times. And then it hit me. She hadn't just betrayed me. She'd erased me. Not in one clean break. In a slow, meticulous unmaking. My stories had been scaffolding for her rise, and once she stood tall enough, she simply removed the beams. My name didn't matter anymore. My voice was background noise she had edited out, and yet I still had that voice she hadn't silenced. Me, she'd only made me quieter, and quiet is not the same as gone. I met Sophia in the rain. Of course I did. Portland always seemed to know when to stage a moment. I had ducked into Powell's books to dry off, wearing my mother's too big raincoat and clutching a secondhand copy of Blewett's like a talisman. She was leaning against a table in the film section, her fingers grazing the spines like she could read stories through touch. There was something cinematic about her, messy hair tied in a silk scarf, leather boots soaked, eyes the kind that pause too long on people like me. She asked me about the book in my hand. I like stories that feel like bruises. I said, Sophia. Smiled. Me too. We talked until the store closed. She walked me to the bus stop, and when I gave her my number, she smiled like she already knew I would. The early days were yellow lit and full of soup. I cooked. She brought flowers. We read aloud to each other, Baldwin, Wolfe, Didion. I shared pieces of my writing, and Sophia listened like it was scripture. You should write for film, she said one night, half curled into my lap, red wine making her voice heavier. Your words move, I laughed. I'm too quiet for film. No, she said, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. You're just waiting for the right lens. I believed her. Her apartment was small but filled with stories. Polaroids. On the fridge, art taped to the walls, old film posters from screenings she'd worked on as a student. We didn't just live together. We nested. I started sleeping with a notebook beside the bed. Sophia would read my pages in the morning, lips moving softly as she mouthed my thoughts. You write like a wound, she said once. It's so intimate. We should build something from this. That we held gravity. It meant trust, collaboration, shared authorship. So I said yes. Grad school had been calling, a fellowship in New York I had worked 2 years to earn. But when Sophia showed me the outline for our joint film project and said, don't go, stay, let's make something real, I hesitated. She kissed me hard that night, whispered about art and purpose and not letting the system flatten me. I deferred my acceptance. Told myself love was a form of learning too. I picked up 2 jobs, one at a bakery, one tutoring first-year students at the community college. Sophia said it was just until the pitch landed. I didn't mind. She was editing the concept reel. I was revising scenes. We were building something, weren't we? When she introduced me to others, it was always with a vague wave. This is my partner. She's the soul of the story, but not the writer. Never the co-creator, just the soul. There was a shift, subtle at first. She started locking her laptop. Drafts stopped showing up in my inbox. She said it was about protecting the process. I said, okay. I didn't want to seem controlling. I didn't want to be that kind of partner, but our apartment changed. Bookshelf with our journals became her mood board wall. My handwriting disappeared from the whiteboard. When I asked how the submission to the festival went, she said, it's complicated. People love the visuals. They want more polished writing. She said it carefully, like she was shielding me from something. And I, like a good collaborator, said, I can revise it again if you want. Sophia smiled, kissed my forehead. You're the heart of this, babe. You just need to trust me. I wanted to. So I did. I stopped writing for myself around that time. It wasn't intentional. It just faded. Like my favorite tea mug, quietly replaced by a sleeker, more photo-ready one. Sophia told me that my kind of rawness was hard to market. That the industry didn't understand quiet stories. She began going to networking dinners I wasn't invited to. I'd cook and wait, pretending I liked the solitude. She'd come home late, smelling like perfume that wasn't mine, and say she was exhausted from being charming. Once, I found a draft of our script open on her screen while she showered. My name wasn't on it. Just hers, the credit read, written and directed by Sophia Blake. When I confronted her, voice barely a whisper, she looked at me like I'd accused her of murder. "Don't be dramatic," she said, toweling her hair. "Everyone knows this was our thing. Names don't matter when. The heart is there." I wanted to believe her. I needed to dot. My friends started pulling back. Anna said Sophia was a narcissist. Jamal called her a charismatic thief. But I defended her every time. "She believes in me," I'd say. They didn't understand. Sophia saw me. She loved the way I thought, the way I wrote pain. She called me a language machine, a phrase that used to make me feel special. Later, I'd realize how mechanical that sounded. Love, I've learned, doesn't always come with bruises. Sometimes it comes with silence, with soft theft, with erasure so slow you don't even notice the parts of you that go missing. By the time I realized I hadn't written a story with my name on it in over a year, I didn't know how to begin again. She had taken the pen from my hand with kisses, with flattery, with guilt, and I had let her. Because I thought love meant making yourself small so the other could rise. Because I believed being the soul of the project was enough. It wasn't. Not then. Not now. It was nearly 2 a.m. when I turned the key in the apartment door. My bones were heavy with fatigue, the scent of burnt espresso still clinging to my skin. My shoes were soaked. Portland had opened up that night, the kind of rain that slides beneath your coat and settles in your spine. I hadn't texted Sophia. I hadn't wanted to. Lately, her answers came late, curt, or not at all. The apartment was dim, but not dark. The hallway light glowed faintly under the office door. I paused. Voices. One of them was hers. The other, higher, brighter, with a cadence I didn't recognize. A woman. I held my breath. They were laughing. Easy, intimate laughter. The kind that doesn't apologize for taking up space. And then I heard Sophia say, "Okay, take it from the second monologue." I froze. Her voice shifted, lower now, deliberate, in performance mode. Then the lines came down. My lines from a scene I wrote in one sitting during a panic attack 3 years ago. Words about fear and disappearing. I had whispered them into Sophia's shoulder at 3 a.m., afraid to read them aloud. She had kissed my forehead, then said, "This is your best work." And now she was feeding it to someone else like it was hers. There was a pause. Then the other woman, the younger voice, said, "God, this is genius. Did you really write this yourself?" And Sophia laughed. A short, charming sound. That laugh tore through me. I didn't cry, didn't shake. Something inside me simply went still, like a lake after a body sinks beneath. I walked into the living room. The door to the office was cracked slightly, the soft blue light of the desk lamp bleeding into the hallway. I didn't knock. I didn't call her name. I walked to the coffee table, where her awards and storyboards and candles still cluttered every surface, and placed my notebook down. The one with the original script. The one she said was too raw, too messy for real production. The one I wrote in cursive when I couldn't sleep. The one she used without permission. It made a soft sound. The sound of something real hitting something fake. Sophia opened the door. She blinked when she saw me. Her mouth parting slightly. She was barefoot. Her lipstick was new. There was another woman behind her, holding a mug and wearing my old HOODIE. No one spoke. I looked Sophia in the eye and said, clearly, quietly, "You forgot your source material." She opened her mouth, but I turned before she could speak. I didn't want to hear it. Whatever apology she might offer, whatever lies she'd dress in compassion, it wouldn't land. Not anymore. I closed the door behind me gently. It didn't slam, but it may as well have been an earthquake. Outside, the rain hadn't let up. The city shimmered beneath it, rain-soaked sidewalks turning every streetlight into a Monet blur. I walked until my thighs ached, until I couldn't feel my toes, until I no longer cared if strangers saw me with mascara bleeding down my face. I didn't have a bag or a plan, just my coat, my keys, and the gut punch clarity that I'd been nothing. More than raw material to the woman I loved. Not a partner, not a muse, just fodder dot she used to say I wrote like a wound. Now I realized she'd made me one. I wandered into the park where we'd filmed our first scene together. I remember standing in that spot 2 years ago, holding the boom mic, shivering, while she shouted directions at a 20-year-old actress pretending to cry. She kept glancing back at me, mouthing, "You're the real inspiration." Now the memory made my stomach turn. I sat on a bench and let the rain wash over me. This wasn't heartbreak. Heartbreak was messy and hot and alive. This was erasure. She hadn't just taken my words. She'd taken my worth, repackaged it, and sold it under her name. She had always been charming. That kind of dangerous, intoxicating charm that made you feel seen in high definition. The kind that took your insecurities and called them character depth. I mistook that for intimacy. I called her collaborator. I called her home. But love built on authorship is ownership. And I had let her own me, word by word. I stayed on that bench until morning blurred in. The sky turned pale, and the rain slowed to a whisper. My hair was soaked through, but I didn't care. I didn't even feel cold anymore. I stood up slowly, bones aching, and walked to the bus stop. I sat in the back, windows fogging from the heat, staring out as the city I once dreamed and drifted by. I didn't know where I was going yet, but I knew. I was leaving. I couldn't stay in a place where every corner held my stolen voice. Later, I would look back at that night and call it my unraveling. That morning, that quiet, exhausted morning on the bus, that was the first stitch, not revenge. Not yet, but a flicker, a beginning. Some endings don't arrive with fireworks. They come softly, like forgetting someone's laugh or watching your name vanish from a shared mailbox. Like a door that doesn't slam behind you, the apartment was dark except for a faint light leaking from under the office door. I wasn't supposed to be home yet. I had picked up an extra shift at the cafe because Sophia said she needed quiet time to draft. But the pipes burst 2 hours in, and they sent everyone home. My body ached from standing, and I smelled like coffee grounds and wet wool. I just wanted to collapse into bed. Instead, I paused in the hallway, my hand on the light switch. I heard it before I saw anything. Laughter. Not Sophia's forced networking laugh. No, the real one. The one that tilted her voice upward at the end like a question. The one I hadn't heard in weeks. Then another voice joined, younger, higher, breezy. The way I used to sound before I knew better. I pressed my back against the wall, letting the shadows hold me. From behind the door came words that didn't belong to that space anymore. Sophia's voice, warm, performative, measured. Reading something. Then I caught the words. You keep saying you love me like it's a lifeline, but I'm already drowning. My breath locked in my chest. That line. That line came from a night 2 years ago. I was crying in the bathtub, unable to say it out loud, so I wrote it on the mirror in steam. Sophia had copied it into her journal and said, "This is the heart of the piece." Now she was reading it to someone else. And that someone said, "God, this is genius. Did you really write this yourself?" Silence. Then Sophia laughed. A soft, honeyed sound, and in that instant, the world I had built cracked, clean and sharp. I didn't shake. I didn't cry. I walked out through the living room, over the rug we chose together, past the lamp one bought during a rare week when I had extra tips. I didn't look at the walls, didn't pause for the framed Polaroid of us on opening night. My feet remembered the way before I did, On the coffee table sat a candle, flickering in a lavender haze. I placed the notebook down next to it, my notebook. The original draft, handwritten, unedited. The one with coffee stains and tear marks on the words. Sophia now spoke as if they were boring her throat. From behind the door, a hush fell. I heard the chair creak. Her footsteps. She opened the door and stared at me, eyes wide. She didn't say my name. Her lipstick was smudged. She wore my old t-shirt. The woman behind her was still in the office, out of view, but I could hear the hush of movement, like she was trying to disappear. Sophia took a step forward. Hey, I didn't think you forgot your source. Material, I said, voice calm, even. I nodded toward the notebook. She blinked. Once, twice, her mouth parted like she wanted to shape something gentle. But no words came out, and I didn't wait for them. I walked to the front door, picked up my coat, and left. The door closed behind me with a soft click. No slam. No scream. Just the hush of something ending. Outside, it was raining again. A steady, cleansing kind of rain, like the city itself was exhaling. I stood under the awning for a moment, the scent of wet pavement rising around me. Then I stepped into it. I didn't care if I got soaked. I welcomed it. The first drops on my face stung, but not from cold. I realized I had been holding something in for too long. Breath, tears, years. Letting it out felt like exorcism. I walked past the corner bodega, past the broken street lamp we always joked about fixing. Each step was a shedding. The scarf she gave me on my birthday, gone. The keychain we bought together at the film festival in Vancouver, gone. The playlist she made for late night writing, deleted. Everything I had called ours had never truly been mine. She built her future from my past and called it vision. I wasn't her partner. I was a reservoir, and she drank until it ran dry. I ended up in Laurelhurst Park. It was nearly 4 a.m. The air was thick with the smell of wet pine. The trees whispered above like old women gossiping, quiet, watchful. I sat on a bench, shoes squelching, coat heavy. Across from me stood a statue I'd always ignored. A bronze woman, eyes raised, reaching for something not there. I stared at her for a long time. She looked like someone who'd waited too long to be rescued. I whispered to her, just once, I'm not waiting anymore. I wish I could say I called a friend or booked a hotel. But the truth is, I sat there until sunrise, then wandered into a 24-hour diner with wet hair and ordered pancakes. I couldn't finish. The waitress didn't ask why I looked like a ghost. She just poured more coffee. Sometimes mercy looks like silence. I found a short-term sublet that afternoon. A studio above a florist, just far enough from the places Sophia knew. I didn't pack much. A backpack of clothes, my external hard drive, and one framed photo of my mother before she got sick, hair pinned up, holding a book like it was a doorway. Didn't take the notebooks. I didn't need to. The words were already in me. Sophia. Didn't call not once. Not even a fake remorse, which somehow hurt more. But it also told me everything I needed to know. I wasn't a person she missed. I was a voice she'd already harvested. I stayed quiet for a week. Then I bought a blank journal. Wrote on the first page, this time it's mine. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the flicker of something real. Not revenge. Not closure. Just a beginning. I didn't disappear dramatically. No grand exit. No cryptic post, no long thread of rage. I just stopped existing in places that knew her name. The town I landed in wasn't remarkable. One highway, one diner, one bakery whose scent reached. The corner before its windows did. It was enough. I found a room above the bakery, tucked into an old house converted into 3 small rentals. The studio had uneven floors, water-stained ceilings, and one window that stuck when it rained. But there were no mirrors, and I liked that. I didn't want to look at my face just yet. The first few mornings were the hardest. I'd wake before the sun, heart galloping, lungs forgetting how to breathe. My fingers would twitch for a notebook and then pause, afraid of what might spill out if I started writing again. I couldn't write. I could barely speak. Coffee helped. Sort of. It gave me something to hold when the silence got too heavy. Bakery downstairs was owned by two sisters, Ellie and Tasha. Ellie was sharp and always carried a pencil behind her ear. Tasha had a laugh that made you feel like you'd been let in on a secret. On my fourth day, Ellie knocked on my door holding a flower-dusted apron. "We just lost our weekend girl," she said. "You interested?" I nodded before I knew why, maybe. I just wanted someone to need me without needing everything. The work was quiet and methodical. Dough doesn't lie. It either rises or it doesn't. There's no performance in yeast. I like that. Liked the way my hands learned to fold and twist. How mornings smelled like vanilla and proofing bread. My shift ended before the town truly woke. By the time the bell above front door started ringing with regulars, I was already slipping upstairs, apron damp, face flushed with heat that didn't come from shame. It was in that room, that small, slanted ceiling room above a bakery, in a town where no one had ever heard of Sophia, that I found a box I thought I'd thrown away. It was taped shut and buried beneath a suitcase I hadn't unpacked. Inside, spiral notebooks with bent corners, receipts with poems on the back, pages I'd ripped out in frustration, then saved like artifacts. My real words, not the edited scripts Sophia had polished, not the monologues she'd molded into awards. Raw things, imperfect, scribbled margins, smudged ink. Mine. I started reading. 1 page a day, then 2. Then more. There were entries I didn't remember writing, angry, trembling confessions, joyful lists of things I loved, sketches of characters I never finished, half dialogues that sounded like versions of me I buried to make room for her. Sophia had never seen these. She hadn't stolen these. The more I read, the more I remembered the sound of my own voice before it was echoed back to me through someone else's mouth. Her name stopped appearing in my thoughts as often. It used to ring through every hour. Sophia would have said this. Sophia would have hated this. Sophia never liked garlic. Sophia loved blue light in the morning. Now, it was just me. The silence didn't sting as much. There was a customer who came every Thursday at 10 a.m. June. Short gray hair. Always wore scarves. Ordered the same thing. Almond croissant and black tea. She never brought a phone. Always read a book. The first time I served her, I forgot the tea. She laughed and said, "That's all right. I've survived worse." She tipped me a folded sheet of paper. At first, I thought it was a receipt. But when I opened it upstairs, I found a short story, typed, single-spaced, full of dust and grief. And a woman running barefoot into the woods. The next week, she came again. Another tip. This one a poem. A fierce little thing about wildflowers that grow through concrete. I didn't ask her why. I just kept collecting them. Some mornings, I'd sit cross-legged on the floor and read them slowly, like prayers I didn't yet believe. One day I left her a note back. Just a line. I used to write too. I forgot how. She smiled when she read it. Didn't say anything. Just reached into her tote bag and handed me a bundle tied with twine, a stack of yellowed typewritten pages. A novella, maybe? Or a very long letter. She looked at me for a long time and said, "You don't lose your voice. You just stop using it out loud." That night, I lit a candle, opened a fresh notebook, not one of the old ones. Not Sophia's. Not even mine. Yet. Just blank, and I wrote, not to be read, not to be published, not even to be finished. Just to exist. The first line was awkward. The second line hurt. The third line came easier. By the fourth page, I wasn't shaking. I stopped trying to make it good. I stopped imagining how Sophia would have rewritten it. I stopped asking if it would ever matter to anyone else because it mattered to me, because it was mine. A week later, I took down the blanket I'd pinned over the mirror. I looked. Really looked. I didn't cry. I saw the fine lines near my eyes, the small scar on my chin, the tired softness under my jaw. I looked. Older than the last time I really noticed myself. But I looked more me dot like a name returning to a face. I'm not healed. I don't think that's even the point anymore, but I no longer flinch when I see a script on someone's table. I don't race to defend my silence. I write now. Just a little. Each day dot, sometimes it's angry. Sometimes it's tender, but every word is mine, and that's enough, for now. I didn't set out for justice dot, at least, not the courtroom kind. I wanted space, silence, my name intact. But silence has its own volume, and eventually mine grew too loud to hold. Months passed like they'd been waiting for me. Morning light through the bakery window no longer felt like apology. I filled notebooks again, stopped hiding my drafts, hung a print on my wall that read, "Write like no one will steal it. Speak like no one can." It started small. A liar from 2 towns over, a friend of June's daughter, offered free legal advice over lemon scones. We sat in the bakery's back office, paperwork spread between us and the smell of cinnamon hanging in the air like ARMOR. I handed her the oldest draft, the one with my original title still on the first page, the title Sophia had cut. Handwritten, annotated, full of crossings out and lips of grief. She nodded as she read. "You kept the receipts. Good." Copyright was easier than I thought. You don't need to shout to protect your work. You just need to own it. The podcast began on a Sunday. I sat on the floor of my studio with a borrowed mic and a blanket draped over a table to muffle the echo. The title was vague on purpose. Footnotes from the uncredited. I used a pseudonym. No pictures. No bio, just a voice, low and steady, reading the stories that once belonged to someone else's spotlight. Each episode, I read a scene from the stolen script, the one Sophia paraded on festival stages in tailored pantsuits and practiced heartbreak. But this time, I added footnotes. My memories, my anger, my sorrow, my reasons I didn't accuse. I just told the truth, and I ended each one with the same words. This was mine. I'm just here to remind you. At first, I had 10 listeners, then 50. Then I got my first message. It was from a woman named Clara. She said, "I watched that film 3 times. Something about it always felt too real. Like someone bled for it. Now I know who." Emails came slowly, then in waves. Some recognized Sophia's movie. Others recognized themselves. I had lines stolen too. My work showed up in a thesis with someone else's name on it. My voice got edited out of my own documentary. Women and a few men telling me they'd been erased, framed out. OVERDUBB did dot. Not all from Sophia dot, just the system. The machine that takes truth and sandpapers at smooth.june listened to every episode. She printed out the transcripts and hand-bound them into a little booklet with a red ribbon. "You should read them," she said one morning. Out loud, in public, I laughed. "I'm not a performer." "No," she said, "but you're the author. And people want the real version now." We rented the back room of the old library. Folding chairs. A mic that crackled a little. Flyers printed at the drugstore and stuck to coffee shop cork boards. I expected 20 people. 50 showed up. Some stood against the wall. Others sat cross-legged on the floor. A girl in the front row had tears in her eyes. Before I spoke, I read slowly, hands steady. The first piece was quiet. A scene about a woman losing her voice in a room full of applause. The second was angrier. The third was the one Sophia used as the closing scene of her film, the one the critics called devastating and original. I read it like a prayer, not whispered. Not scream dot, just true dot at the end. I looked up. The room was holding its breath. Then, from the back, a voice said, "You wrote that?" I nodded dot. A murmur swept through the room, then clapping. Then someone shouted, "Say your name." I did. For the first time in front of an audience, I said my full name, not the pseudonym, not the silence, just me. Someone recorded it. I didn't. Even noticed that 3 days later, the video had 30,000 views, then 80,000, then a headline on a niche art site, uncredited no more. Woman claims authorship of festival darling film. I didn't claim anything. I just read what was mine, but the headline stuck. I didn't respond to the media, didn't send threats, didn't tag Sophia. I didn't need to. The comments spoke for themselves. Her voice feels more real than the actress's. I always wondered why that film felt like it belonged to someone else. Turns out it did. One night I got a message, not from Sophia, from a producer named Lyle.mid40s. Gruff tone, email riddled with typos but sincere. He wrote, "Been in this business a long time. Heard a lot of stories. Yours cuts through the noise. I think you've got something to say, and I'd like to help you say it your way." I read it twice, then again. Then I closed my laptop, sat still for a long time, and breathed, not shakily. Not shallow, deep, like lungs that had been underwater too long finally got air. I didn't cry. I didn't run to tell anyone. I just made tea, opened my notebook, and began again. Page 1. My name at the top. Not for revenge. Not for a headline. Just for me. Because I remembered now, I always had the script. She just forgot I kept it. The venue hasn't changed. The same vaulted ceiling. Same deep red curtains. Same rows of spotlights humming overhead like a quiet threat. The same echo when heels cross the wooden stage. I'd sat in the back row last time, nearly holding my breath to stay unseen. This time, I'm walking in through the front. Charcoal suit, soft shoulders, sharp line. The olive leaf necklace catches the light, a quiet crown at my collarbone. Inside the lining of the jacket, stitched just beneath. My hand, my mother's lace. Her name embroidered in gold thread beside mine. I don't need it for courage. I wear it because I already have it. Sophia's on stage when I arrive. Ivory silk. High ponytail. That same choreographed poise, the one she used to practice in the mirror when she thought no one was watching. People watch now. Her name is announced like it's carved in marble. Visionary, multi-award winning, a voice of a generation. She smiles with her whole body. She walks like applause was sewn into her spine, but when she sees me, her foot falters, not a stumble. Just a fraction of a second, but I see it. Sit in the second row. She doesn't look at me again. Her speech is polished. She speaks in metaphors. About shared voices and borrowing pain for the sake of beauty. About stories that transcend ownership. She thinks her collaborators, her mentors, her childhood journals. She never says my name. She's learned how to forget it out loud. The MC steps up after her, clapping. There's one final speaker tonight. One whose voice you may know, or whose silence you may have felt. Please, welcome. They say my full name. The room shifts. Some turn in their seats. A few glance at Sophia, who's moved to the side of the stage. I walk slowly. Not dramatic. Deliberate. When I reach the center, I exhale. The mic hums. The lights are hot. I press play on the projector remote. The screen lights up behind me. 2 columns. 2 timelines. On the left, a clip from my podcast. My voice, steady, low, clear. On the right, a scene from Sophia's film. Same words, same rhythm, different mouth. I let them play in sync. They don't just echo. They match. Laughter, a scream, a whispered confession. Word for word. My voice. Her film. The audience watches. Some don't blink. Others blink too much. I pause the video. Silence. Then I speak. My name is mine again. I let that sit for a moment. No rush, no apology. When I wrote those words, I was in love. I was in pain. I trusted someone with both. I glanced sideways. I don't look at her directly. I don't need to. She told me she was shaping something together. That we were building a future and scripts and life and truth. I gesture to the screen, but some people don't build, they take. There's a rustle in the seats. I continue. This isn't just about stolen dialogue. It's about stolen voice. About what happens when love is used like a studio note, trimming you down, reframing your story until you don't recognize yourself. I wasn't just left out of the credits. I was erased from the room. I walked toward the edge of the stage. Closer to the audience. Some of you watched that film. You felt moved. I did too, the first time I wrote it. A few chuckles, unsure. I smiled gently. No bitterness. Just clarity. She said I was too sensitive, that it didn't matter. Whose words they were, only that they meant something. That I should be flattered to be part of her masterpiece. I breathe. Flattery is not the same as acknowledgement. Someone claps once, then stops. The room is on edge. I hold steady. Started a podcast to tell my version. I used a pseudonym at first. I was scared. My voice shook in the early recordings. You can hear it. You can hear the parts where I stop and breathe too loud, where I almost delete the file. But I didn't. The projector changes. Photo of my notebooks, my handwriting. Dated drafts. Then one of the live reading. A still of me standing in front of the library crowd. The red ribbon tied around the bound transcript. June, made for me. Then a quote from the podcast. Projected in large font. This was mine. I'm just here to remind you. My story went viral. That wasn't the goal. I just wanted to be heard. But something happened. People started writing in, saying they'd felt it too. The slow vanishing, the repackaging, the theft that doesn't look like theft because it's smiling and beautiful and so professional. This isn't just a Sophia problem. This is an industry problem, a silence problem, a don't make waves problem. I hear a chair creak. Someone in the back sniffles. I speak softer now. Tonight, I didn't come here to confront her. I came to complete me. I'm not a side note anymore. I'm not a ghost in the credits. I'm not the ex-girlfriend who used to write. I take a breath. I am the author. The screen fades to black behind me. I step. Back to center stage. This is not revenge, I say, voice steady. This is reclamation. A pause. I am not invisible anymore. The audience rises. First row, then second. Then all of them. Thunder. Applause like waves. Loud, crashing, endless. People are crying. Some are filming. Some are just standing there, stunned. I don't. Look at Sophia. Not once. I bow my head slightly. I thank them with a hand over my heart, and I walk off stage. Outside, it's quiet, cool night. Streetlights reflecting off wet pavement. The scent of pastries lingering from a booth nearby. I unzip the jacket. My mother's lace brushes my wrist. I press a hand to it. Then I smile. I did not lose my voice. I was waiting for the right room. And now the room knows my name.